Tuesday, September 29, 2003. This interview with Leonard Hamilton is taking place at the Westbury Senior Citizen Center. Leonard was born on December 11, 1938, and lives at 230 Harper Street, Westbury, New York. My name is Susan Koverick, and I will be the interviewer. I am the curator of the local history collection and am representing the Historical Society of the Westburys, an official partner for the Veterans History Project. Could you state for the recording what war and branch of service you served in?
Oh, I was in the Desert Storm in 1991, Saudi Arabia.
And what branch of the service?
The U.S. Army, U.S. Army Reserve.
What was your rank?
I was a Sergeant E8. I'm sorry, correction, C7. Never got to the E8.
Okay, now you said you were in the reserves. Would you tell me how you got into that, when, and everything?
Oh, yeah. I joined the reserves in 1955 back in New York City. It wasn't actually the reserve, it was the National Guard. And I joined there in 1955, like I said, and stayed in there till 1965, which I got out. And then I had a break in service at that time. And went back in 1971, I believe. And that time I went into the U.S. Army Reserve, which was in New Jersey. It was Cavern Point, New Jersey. And it was a transportation outfit, trucking outfit. And I stayed in there till I went to the Gulf War and got out in 1991.
Okay, did you go into the reserves right after you got out of school, or when did that take place in your life?
Oh no, I got out. I went to the reserve as a young boy, about 16 and a half. I put my age up to my brother's birthday, which would have been that August, and I was born in December, so I needed 6 months to get in to be at 17. And the reason why I did that because I belonged to the PAL, and they said that would be a good career for me to go into when I got into the National Guard.
So in the National Guard, you only had to go for training, whatever, at certain times? You had another life besides being in the National Guard?
Well, no. Well, in the National Guard, at the time I went in, you weren't required to go away at all. You only attend drills only on a Wednesday or Thursday night, because there was 2 units at the Armory that I belonged to. And I was in the 369th National Guards, and they drill on a Wednesday night for 2 hours. And I believe after about 4 to 5 years, they instituted a program where the soldier who joined up the National Guard had to go away for 6 months training in order to belong to the reserves. And I believe that was during the time when the Vietnam was just getting underway under President John Kennedy.
So did you have to do that, or you didn't have to because you had been doing this other training?
No, I didn't have to do that because I was in there prior to that, and by that time I was a sort of seasoned soldier already. So we used to use our training at that time. We went up to a place they call West Point, which is for Peekskill. And there we used to do our weekend trainings there, like twice a year. We used to go there on weekends. And then, of course, we went to Fort Drum, New York, which is upstate Watertown. We did that for our annual 15-day field training.
Okay, so at this time, did you have another career? Did you get married? Can you tell me what was going on in your personal life?
Oh, yeah. Well, when I joined up at 17, I wasn't married, of course. But I got married shortly after that because my wife was my childhood sweetheart, which lived in the same building I lived in. And, of course, we got married very young. And I believe that was one of the reasons why, also by being in the National Guards, that I weren't called up for the Vietnam offensive. And I lost my thought. We were just there, and
Did you have a family then, after you got married?
oh yeah, I started a family right away, I guess, and I had my first child in 1957, and then the other one born in 2 years later, 1959, and I didn't go back. I got out in 65 rather, and didn't go back until like 71. So I was with my family a while. And my second career was as a butcher, because I went to Food Trade Vocational High School, and there I used to work in the local butcher shops down in the neighborhood, and so my family always ate. Always had plenty of food to eat, you know. Always had a job, you know. Working since I was 13 years old, so it was always food on the table. Yeah.
Now, I don't know if you said, where were you living at this time?
I was living in Harlem, what they call Uptown, and it's called Sugar Hill at the time. Probably still called Sugar Hill, and very nice neighborhood.
Okay, you said that you got out of the National Guard for a few years, and then you went back into the reserves?
Yeah. Well, why I went back to the reserves at that time is because in 1968 I joined the Department of Sanitation, and there I found out that it was profitable to go into the reserves and serve your country at the same time. So that's what I did.
Okay, and that was around 1970, 71 that you went into the reserve?
Yes, in 1971. Some friends of mine in the Department of Sanitation was already in the reserves, and through conversations we found out that they were in, and evidently I just followed them on through and joined up the unit in Jersey City, which they belonged to, which is a trucking outfit. You know, a lot of guys when you're young I like to drive, so you know, it was a big idea driving a big oil tanker and, you know, being with some of the people that you like to be with.
And so what kind of training did you do there? Was it weekends and or a special time of the year when you had to go for training?
Well, no, you had your, at that time you had weekends. There's no more during the week drills, you know. These are what they call 4 weekends a month. And you would go away for 2 days, weekends, and it was really field training, not like in the urban city where you drilled in an armory. There you drilled on the outside in the fields, and you actually dealt with fueling and running and the maintenance of the trucks. Yeah.
Okay, now you said you were in the Persian Gulf War in 1991.
Yeah, I was in that because at that time when I joined the reserves in Jersey City, I put approximately about 21 years there, and during the course of that time I became the food service sergeant because my friend ratted me out and told the captain that he had somebody who would take over the food service, and I really weren't a cook, but just a butcher, so he stuck me in there anyway, and I continued that. And when the Persian War broke out, Saddam acting crazy and stupid, invading Kuwait, we had an inkling that we was going to be activated. And sure enough, it happened. My outfit was slated to go over, and we went over December, November, around there, 1990, I believe it was. And, there I went over there, and I became the mess sergeant over there, and we fed, well, the company was 120 men strength, and I fed them all. They all pretty good.
What happened when, I remember when the troops were over there first, they called it Operation Desert Shield, I think, and then when actual fighting broke out, it changed to Desert Storm. What happened when the fighting broke out?
Well, I tell you, it was my first experience with any type of war, and when we landed in Saudi Arabia on the peninsula there of the Gulf, we landed there with full gear, marked gear, because they thought Saddam was going to use all this chemical weapons on us, and we got into our vehicles, the ones we had, because the rest of them hadn't gotten there yet, and we went to our first staging area, which was in Tehran, not Tehran, I can't call it over there now, but I have to look it up. And we stayed in there for about 2 or 3 days, and it was Cobalt Towers, I think it was. That's right, Cobalt Towers we stayed. And there we listened for the air raids and the mop-ups and meetings every night about what our duties was going to be. And it was very frightening because most of us never been in the war before, and it was an experience. At the same time, you felt safe because you're around people who knew their jobs and who was capable of doing their job and who was ready to do their job. So the fear was there, but the motivation was there at the same time too.
So did you actually do fighting? I know you said you drove the trucks, but did you actually do any of the fighting?
Well, the 920 transportation is what they call a support group. You know, we provide logistics for the fighting forces. We weren't trained in the art of combat per se. You know, sure, we fought offensively or attacked, but they had those special forces in there that did the engagement of the enemy. You know, we didn't do that. We did our support. We stand guard duty. We guard ammunition. We supplied fuels to the tanks that had to do actual fighting. We ran missions. You know, we ran some of the biggest missions in the Gulf War at that time. You know, we had over 50 tankers. And we had four squads for tanks, not tanks, rather fuel tankers. And those guys really ran missions. And I had to provide meals for them for 4 to 5 days at a clip, and then also provide meals for people who was back in the brims, you know. And that was I don't know if you know, in the desert, you ever look at the moon and see the cradles? Well, each brim was like that, and it was mounds of sand piled at least 10 to 15 feet high, and each brim would be at least a circumference of about a mile around. So you had 2 to 3 companies within one brim, and they all had their own missions. You know, so it was very organized, and each brim of soldiers in the deserts, I bet you they were at least 5 to 6 to 7 miles apart. So there was no way for him, Hussein, or who they were, to attack us and try to wipe us all out because the area was just too bad, too big. But it did cause some complication because those soldiers had to be fed, and the ration breakdowns was like 75 to 80 miles apart. So in order to go get rations, it was a whole day's ride, and you had to bring back 3 days' rations every time you went out. So it was nice. About the fighting now, the only fighting I mean, not the fighting, but we did hear the bombardments. You know, we didn't actually see it. It was real weary. And then riding through towns on a convoy on a missions to go pick up the rations, we would go through towns that was really deserted. It was like despair buildings, and you see camels, and you see things there that that was like a ghost town, like a western, you know, like you see nobody there. And I thought it was really eerie, you know, but we did it. Excuse me. Then a lot of times when we went out for rations, we had to be navigated by what they call land sites and, you know, like landmarks. And in the desert, a landmark don't never stays the same because the sand is shifted and took it away, and then now you got to depend on your little compass to give you, you know, following that. And you had to know how to read a compass in order to go there, because each route was different each time. There's no tracks to follow, because you go in there, you leave a track, coming back, the track was gone because of the wind and the sand. So you really had to know what you was doing out there and recognize your burn when you get to it, you know.
Now, I don't remember exactly. The Gulf War didn't last too long. Do you remember how long it lasted, and how did you feel when it was over?
Well, I remember when we all had a meeting with the captain and certain NCOs, and they told us the war was going to start in 72 hours. And I believe it only lasted 2 days, 3 days at the most. And our guys had went out on a mission to fuel, I don't know what tank division it was, but they left out that same day the war was supposed to start. And they had went, well, okay, number, let's see, it was had to be maybe the second day it started. Yeah, second day, because they said they had went all the way into Kuwait almost, and they had seen the tanks, which was blown out by the A-10 airplanes that bombed these tanks, and how devastating it was, because they saw human remains and bodies and casualties laying all over the side of the road. It was like a Long Island Expressway in a traffic jam, and flames are burning, and tanks are burning, cars are burning. And that's just the way it was in the war. It was very eerie. They were told not to get out, not to touch anything, stay on the main drag, don't go off on the side of the road because there's booby traps. And that's what our guys did. They didn't do it. They didn't go off. You know, I mean, nobody was hurt. Our only casualty was a guy died of natural causes. I can't remember what it caused, but it wasn't war related. And so it was pretty good in that respect.
Now, the tanks he's telling you were burned out and everything, those were the Iraqi?
Tanks, yeah, the Iraqi tanks were falling out of the way in water, smithereens. I didn't see it, but I heard a lot of stories that the guys came back and, you know, sat down and over dinner was talking about, would tell me, you know, some pictures they brought back, but I don't have any.
Okay, so at the end of the war, what happened? Where did you go from there?
Oh, at the end of the war, what happened? Well, then we would start to after we know that Hussein was defeated, we got him out of Kuwait and pushed him back into Iraq. And President George Bush didn't want to go into Iraq because he said that wasn't our mission at the time. Our mission was just to get him out of Kuwait and free them of him taking over the country. And so after that, a couple of days later, a couple of weeks later, I guess, after everything cooled down, we started packing our gear and counting equipment and getting things back together and come on back home.
How do you feel about Bush's decision not to pursue Saddam in light of the current events, the Iraqi war that we're in now?
Well, I have a little mixed feelings about it, but if you ask me at the time about his decision, is because, well, there was a coalition of many more nations than we have now. And they all was under the agreement that we're just going to get him out of Kuwait. We're not going to go any further. Now, the politics of the war, you know, I have nothing to do with that. You know, I'm a soldier, I do as I'm told, you know, and I fight the war accordingly. Looking back at it now, I wish that we could have had a better coalition than we got now. I think we could have used a little more UN resolutions there and go along with the world body. But that's my opinion. You know, if I was there now, I would be fighting as a soldier. But I still think that we should have used their discretion and waited for the UN, for the inspectors to do their job. And, you know, if we need to build a rank, we could have done it with less lots. Casualties on, not casualty, but infrastructure casualties on the building, the electric grids, and the water. That could have been saved, and, you know, there'd be less money that we have to be throwing out now. You know, it's a political opinion.
How was your family, what age were your children when you went to the Persian Gulf?
Well, Len was, they were in their 30s or late 20s, around there, and one girl was, she was in law school, and she wrote me really regularly, telling me about, and asking me her opinion about different court cases and stuff. And I sort of like tried to write her back and tell her what I thought about it. But they understood. They knew what the war was all about. And I felt very safe there. At that time, there was a lot of women in the service at the time. And they were right there, mingling right there with the men. All right. They slept in the same tent we did. It was like 30, 40 men tent. When I say men, no offense to the women, but people tent, okay? And of course they had their ponchos hanging in between their side of the tent, and that's the way we did, you know. It was very close together. We had women, soldiers who was, I would say, is just as equal to or better than some of the guys. You know, they did their job and they took it seriously, man. We had NCOs that were women that did their job superbly. So I have no qualms of working with them, you know, of them giving me orders, because they proved themselves in that situation, which was A-okay.
That was the different thing about this war, that there were so many women serving as the same as men in the service, right?
You know, they were there, because from the start, you know, when I first went in, and I did my first 10 years, and then I went back in 1971, and I think that's when I seen the biggest change in the military, where women had gotten in and was doing a job, and they proved themselves. You know, there it is. They did a job. It was great.
Did you feel there was any racial discrimination or anything because of your race?
Oh, not in time of war. To me, I didn't see it. I can put it that way. And I didn't hear of it anyway. The problem most of us had is just to motivate people to do the job they had to do. But racism, I didn't see it.
Okay, now after you came out of the war, you went back to your job that you'd had before?
Oh yeah, well, the job was good about that. What they did was they paid you your salary while you were gone away, so it wouldn't be such a burden, but it was because they didn't give it to you until you got back. So you still had to make ends meet, you know. And the wife was very good at making ends meet, so there's no problem. Then the military had a lot of assistance that they gave you. You know, she had access to the commissaries, to the military posts, and a couple of the wives that husbands was in the service with me, they got together and did 1 month shopping at the commissary at one time, and worked it out that way. We had our own medical plan. It was still in the force, so that wasn't stopped while I was away. So she had access to that, so that was a good part of it. You know, not all of the guys in the military was fortunate as I was, you know, especially the runts, the guys with the PFCs and the privates, you know. They didn't make much money, so, you know, naturally, they caught it a little harder than the guys who were the E7s and the E8s, you know. So they might have had a little more difficult time than I did, but, you know, they was taken care of too while they were there, but their families were a different story.
Now, where was your wife living when you were over in the Persian Gulf?
Oh, we was out here in Westbury, same place. Been out here 32 years, you know, so it's not too bad.
So you moved out to Westbury sometime, when did you move?
Oh, we moved out in Westbury around 1971, 72, you know, just before I went in for the second time into the military. And it was beautiful. I think everybody should go to the military.
Do you belong to any veterans organizations now?
Yeah, I belong to the American Legion, and we have one here, post number 11. 11 something. And what's happening is that, and the Veterans Association and the American Legions, the older people is just fading out, you know, and they don't have the new kids that's coming in, so the legions are becoming very weak in numbers. You find a lot of participants up in age, and they rather just go ahead and pay dues rather than participate. So we may have a membership of 100, but you have maybe 10 people that would show up regular for a monthly meeting. You know, the American Legion is a very fine organization. They do a lot of good things for the neighborhood. They honor the police departments and stuff like that. They have marches on Veterans Day. They do picnics, you know, for kids and things like that. So we can't do it because you don't have the participation of members. And the younger people, and when I say that, I'm talking about even 40, don't don't want to join because a lot of times they say, well, they don't want to be hanging out with old people, you know. So we find it hard to even draw them in because we used to have some Vietnam people come in, you know, and now they're beginning to come in. But the Gulf War people is not there yet, you know. They're not at the age that they want to come in. And certainly the people in this war, you won't see them anytime soon because they're not even thinking in that vein right now. They're going to get out, they're going to work for their family and try to make a career out of something else. You know, so the American Legion and American Legion foreign wars, they're catching a little hell on this because guys are not participating. They have paid their dues, but they just won't come out helping the parades and the marches. And you know, we used to go out and take flags and put them on the graves out in the national parks and stuff like that. You know, which we do every year. And we have to put out maybe 400 or 500 flags, and you only got 5 or 10 people. You know, it's kind of rough. But we seem to make it though. You know. But we can use.
Do you have anything more that you'd like to add about your experiences in the war or any other experiences?
Oh, no. You know, I was just a typical soldier, I guess. I tell you, the one thing that was funny about this war was that when you went over to the country like Saudi Arabia, it was a dry state, you know. And there, you know, you had the army, you know, those guys like to have their beer once in a while, you know what I mean? And to tell them they had to go over there and spend 6 to 7 months over there and not a drop of liquor, oh man, that was sort of like heartening, you know. But it was always a way of doing what you had to do. So if without revealing too much to anybody, my father was a good supporter of me. And, you know, the care package that they sent to you as a soldier, you know, they put the Listerine, the tuna fish, and the sandwiches, and not sandwiches, but all dry goods that they could send you in a care package and a box, and they'll wrap it up with brown paper and tape, and they send it to you. So my father, knowing me, he got a Listerine bottle, one of them big bottles of Listerine, man, and he poured out the Listerine and put in some bourbon in that thing, man, and filled it up. And so when I called him, I say, "Pop, what are you going to do? You got to do something." He said, "I can't see no problem." I said, "Yeah, you can do something." He said, "All right, I'll send you a package." So sure enough, he sent that package. I stood around that day, and the package came, man, opened it up and popped that open, that Listerine bottle, and sure enough, man, that was there. So I called about 5 of the friends around, and we sat around there, and, you know, I couldn't even get a buzz because I gave it all out. So that was one way that we got a little inducement. But they used to not the PX, but they used to give us from the commissary. We used to pick up what they call non-alcoholic beer, and we would bring that home. I would bring that back from the commissary and give it to the guys. Man, they just didn't like that beer. It didn't have no kick to it. But they had a little thing that they did to troops too, was called R&R, and they sent them to Bahrain. And at Bahrain, there you can relax, have a drink, and do what you want. That's one of the countries that they allowed alcohol at. And I had a friend that went on R&R, and he did bring back, you know, I ain't gonna liquor, but you know, something big. So most of the troops that had parents who were getting packages, you know, they didn't get a lot of alcohol. There's nothing that you could get bombed on, you know. It was something to talk about. And so, like, every time I got a care package, I had 10 guys around me looking for, you know, a hit, you know, from the alcohol. But that was some of the things I remember. That was fun. And then we used to make weights. We had a gym that we made out of sandbags that we tied to a pole. We put it on a bench and we did our bench presses and warm-ups. And also remember too, there was very, very bad windstorms. They call them sandstorms. And in the mess tent, when there was a sandstorm coming up, it was like a tornado coming right out of here. From here, it was really windy, really sandy. You couldn't see in front of you. You got sand blasted, and you had to keep. Well, we had to keep our food and everything really covered up. The tents had to be pulled down. They had to be staked to the ground, and a lot of times you would get fine sand and dust inside the mess tent. And, you know, everything would be white. And but of course, we had all the food covered up in pots and then in boxes and stuff the best we could. And all the flaps pulled down on the tent. And that sandstorm would last anywhere from an hour and a half, and that was continuously. It was like a lockdown. Nobody went out. Nobody did nothing. And then in the summertime, which was really nice, when I say summertime, when it wasn't sandstorming, it would used to get like 110, 115, you know, really hot. And you go wash your clothes, in 15 minutes they're dry. Dry, can you imagine that? I was saying, you know, guys would wash their underwear, wash their clothes, and hang it up on a line, and within 15 minutes, man, they could put it right back on. So there was no really reason for nobody to be dirty, you know, over there. And that was really nice, you know, that you could wash like that. There's a lot of things over there. We used to go into town a lot. Well, first sergeant and myself and a couple of other NCOs. I remember going to town and we almost ran out of fuel, and we ran into a gas station, and I wasn't quite sure how to read it, but they go by liters, and it was like 9 cents a liter. So we weren't by a military fueling station, so we bought gas for 9 cents a gallon. And continued on our journey, man, because the kids strapped out there with no fuel. Oh, man, that was a no-no, because you're supposed to make sure that your vehicles are fueled up at all times and that you got enough fuel to go and come where you want to come back. And if not, then you take fuel tanks to put on, your fuel cans to put on your vehicle to go out. And, you know, sometimes in your rush to get out of there, you don't do the right thing by putting enough fuel on the tank, so going out and get caught, you got to buy fuel, so you buy it. Then we had telephone calls which guys could make. You know, they had big field phones out there, and they were like, about 20 miles away. So we used to put groups of soldiers of 5 to 10 or 15 on the back of a truck and take them out to make phone calls, and then they made their phone calls, they come back, and a few more guys would go out and they'll make their phone calls. And at first they was giving us free phone calls. And that lasted for about a week or so. And then after that you had to pay for it, reverse the charges, or use whatever means you had to make your phone call. And there's no limit to how long you could call, so you can call as many times you want. Surprising too, they also have what they call rainstorms in the desert. Flash floods. In other words, it'll rain so hard that the water will flood, and you can, if you get caught in the cradle, you can actually drown. So, you have to watch out for those types of things, events. And it was amazing because, I mean, I never got caught in one, but I heard people talk about it. Then another thing I've seen, they're bringing in a bunch of, I guess they be Iraqis with the prison camps on flatbed trucks, and we used to throw up a package of sea rations to them, and if we threw anything with pork in them, they would throw it back. Because than anymore. You know, so.
Sounds like it was an interesting experience being over there.
Oh yeah, it was something that I never seen before, and after a while, I guess, with the United States and the coalition forces so involved and under control, you really didn't have any fear of anything. You really felt safe. You know, I remember going into town a couple of times, and it reminds me of seeing these old Sinbad movies where you walk into the villages and you see the storefronts and everybody trading, and you know they were what they call exchange centers, like gold centers. And the Iraqis used to, not Iraqis, but the Saudi Arabians used to walk around with the gold in their sachets and their pockets, and they made deals with you right on the street. Now, there was no policeman watching them, no nothing like that, but they had what they call guard police. And what it is, like every 6 or 7 hours, you have to close the shop and you pray. And then on certain days, they had to close the shop down. In other words, they close their iron gates and everybody go pray. Then after a couple of hours, they blow the horn, shops open back up, and then you go shop again. And like I was saying, they had big as this table, or big as this counter, all around in this place. There'll be gold all over, and everybody be making deals and exchanging. And I thought that was weird because the guy would give you the gold and he'd turn his back. He didn't worry about you stealing. He didn't worry about you stealing because they caught you stealing. They'd chop your hand off. You know what I mean? Nobody even steal from each other. That's how that was, and I thought it was amazing because, you know, a couple of those guys that came over there, they ain't nothing but a bunch of crooks. The soldiers, you know. So, but they was cool. They must have been briefed somewhere. Somebody must have told them something because when they came into those stores, they were just as polite, which was nice. And you know, they also told us too about giving hand signals to Iraqi people. I keep saying Iraqi. I don't know why. Saudi Arabia. And you know, the finger, you don't do that. You know, thumbs up. But if you go this way, that's a no-no. So it has to be this way. The other way was an insult, you know, and you could cause an international conflict by doing something like that, you know.
I remember hearing about that in the news, and you know, because of the customs in Saudi Arabia, the soldiers did have to be careful about what they did, and remember some of these things that you're telling about.
Yeah, because you know, you're going over there, and you want to be their friends, and it wasn't Saudi Arabia we was getting the troops out of, it was Kuwait. So, you know, they were supporting the United States at the time while we were there. You know, they had all the air bases and all the good stuff over there. So we wanted to be their friends. We came out of it all right. So, I tell you, I got to ramble on over it. There was a lot of good things over there I enjoyed, you know. I mean, I would go back tomorrow, so they would let me, but, you know, they don't know,
You mean you'd be willing to go over to Iraq?
Yeah, why not? Sure. It's a great country, no place better to be.
So you're a member of the senior center here? You keep busy in the senior center?
I'm a member, but I don't come as much as I should. My wife says every day, but I don't be here every day. You know, she comes down. I got a couple of ideas I want to do, but they won't let me. They won't let me.
What else do you do with your time?
Well, I do a lot of RVing now. I had a motorhome now for the last 5 years. We've been traveling across the country. We've been up to California. We've been down to Florida. We've been up to Kentucky. Matter of fact, we just came back from Tennessee about 2 weeks ago. We was out 2 weeks out there. Grand Ole Opry, Memphis, Chattanooga. You know, so we've been traveling pretty good. And next week we're going to go on the Carnival Cruise Line. We're going down to Tortola, Puerto Rico, and another island. But we're sailing out of New York, going down there for 8 days. So God's been good to me. God's been good to the family. You know, so we're happy.
Okay, well, thank you very much for the interview.
Thank you for interviewing me.
Tuesday, September 29th, 2003. This interview with Leonard Hamilton